Hey everyone, welcome to our resume writing and interview preparation workshop webinar, if you will. I first want to make sure everything's working. I want to make sure you can see me. I want to make sure you can hear me and that everything's good. So, hey Hiram, glad you could join us. Fantastic. Can you see and hear, and I'll spell it correctly, me? Can you see and hear me? That way I know that we're ready to go. Hope you're having a good week. Hey, Friday. I hope you had a good week, and if you didn't, it's almost over, right? But if you did, that's great. Okay, Hiram, yes, and Ahmed, fantastic. Sounds like we are all set to go. So, let's do it, right? We've got a few folks with us. Others will be joining on as we go along. That is just fine. And of course, I am recording this, so you can always reference it later on, send it to friends and family, things like that. So with that, let's get into our presentation. So, like I said, resume writing and interview preparation workshop. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lon Schiffbauer, and I am a professor of business management at Salt Lake Community College. I am also an HR consultant, and so I do that on the side. And I have been working in the HR field for easily 2 decades. And now, for those of you that know me, hey, Christopher and Kaylee, we have Kaylee too. Awesome. For those of you who know me, you know I don't like titles. I don't get into the whole Professor Schiffbauer nonsense or anything like that. So why do I have BA, MBA, PhD, SPHR after my name? Well, it's basically an invitation for you to allow me some level of credibility. So I have a master's in business administration as well as a PhD in organizational psychology. And organizational psychology is essentially HR. And then I am a senior professional in HR. That's a SPHR certification. And I've been in this business for, as I said before, 20 years, and I'm still in it today. And so I've been around the block, okay? I have been a hiring manager on multiple occasions. I've, of course, been the interviewee. I have put in place and designed hiring processes, new hire processes. So I have been involved in every aspect of the hiring process, if you will, for both large, small, and medium-sized companies. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are not just book smarts, folks. This is from hands-on experience, okay? Now, next thing is, today we're just talking about resumes and interviews. That's all we're going to go over, and that's enough as it is. We're going to be here for like an hour and a half or so. But there's a lot more to getting the job. And so I want to invite you to go to my channel, Nutshell Brainery. That's actually where you are right now, Nutshell Brainery. And there's a playlist there called How to Change Careers. That playlist, it's still ongoing. I think we're on episode 7 or 8 of a 13 episode series that will be, finishing up here in the next month. It goes all the way from first thinking, hey, I think I want a different career, all the way to thriving in that career. So it talks about everything like researching the company, building your network, learning business acumen, preparing your references, things like that. So there's a lot to this. So I want to send you on over there for additional information. However, today we're going to go deep into resumes and interviews. Okay. Now, before we get started, I want to kind of calibrate your brain to something really quick. I want to do some settings in there. One is, you already know a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. My job is to help you understand what you already know. So, for example, you already know that a resume should be 1 to 2 pages. Well, why should it be just 1 to 2 pages? You already know that you should dress right for the interview. Why should you dress right? So, this is my way of saying whenever we come up to something that you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I already know that. I know you know it. But the power is knowing the why, because when you know the why behind it, then that gives you true power in the resume and interview process. Okay. There's also another thing I'd like to invite you to kind of conceptualize is there's in fact 3 conditions that must be in place for a company to hire. And it's important that you understand these conditions because they give you this whole thing, folks. This whole live stream is about giving you power. I want you to embrace the idea that I want to empower you. So understanding these 3 conditions will empower you. The first condition that has to be in place for a company to hire is they have to have a problem. There has to be a problem. If there's no problem, they're not going to hire. By the way, just so you know, hiring is a major pain in the butt, and it is extremely expensive. Unless you've been on the inside, I don't know that you can truly appreciate how arduous and painful and difficult it is to hire someone and how expensive the whole process is. It would blow your mind. And so trust me, if the company doesn't have a problem, they're not going to hire. All right, that's condition 1. What about 2? The problem is costing them money, okay? If the problem were not costing them money, then they wouldn't hire, right? Okay, I've got a problem. I totally get that, and it sucks, but we're doing fine. It's not costing me money. Well, hiring costs money, so ergo, I'm not going to hire. All right, condition number 3. They cannot solve the problem with their current resources. This is key. Now, if a company has a problem and they can totally, and it's costing them money, but they can totally solve it with who they have in place right now, they're not going to hire. They'll redistribute some roles and responsibilities. I want you to take care of this. I'm going to add this hat to your job description, and everybody has to take on extra work and so forth. But they've solved the problem that was costing them money without hiring. But if they can't do that, then they hire. So why is this important for you to kind of wrap your mind around? Because they need you. They have a need. They have a need that is causing them pain and money. They need you. And so everything we're going to talk about today is all around the idea of convincing the employer that you have the skills, experience, and abilities to solve their need. Okay? That's what I want you to wrap your mind around. We're going to come back to this several times today, so bear with me. All right, so let's do this. I apologize. Quick drink. Let's do part 1, resumes. A resume really only has one purpose. And that is you want the hiring manager to pick up the phone. That's all. You're not going to get the job because of the resume. You may not even really be prioritized because of a resume. You may or may not. All the resume is going to do is get you the interview. So here's the thing. What would cause a hiring manager to look at a resume and then pick up the phone? Well, you already know the answer now because we recalibrated your thinking. What gets them to pick up the phone is the conviction that you can solve my problem. All right? Which means we want to demonstrate our skills and abilities and experience in such a way as to show that they solve problems. Okay? That should be the whole intent of a resume. I solve your problems. Okay, so with that, let's dig into this. First, format. Now, just so you know, we're going to cover some really basic things that you're going to be kind of like, holy hell, I'm spending my Friday morning listening to this. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. And then we're going to get really deep. Okay. So format is pretty basic. Um, no more than 2 pages. No more than 2 pages. And in fact, if you can do 1 page, depending on where you are in your career, you totally want to do 1 page. If you're young in your career and you've only had a few jobs, then 1 page is fine. If you've been in the workplace for 20 years, well, all right, 2 pages is going to do it. Now, you would be shocked and amazed how many people send in a resume that's more than 2 pages. I kid you not. I have had sent to me resumes that were clearly bound at FedEx Kinko's, FedEx office, and were like 18 pages long. Okay? We don't even open those. We don't even look at them. Here's the idea. When I post a job, I totally expect I'm going to get 60 or 70 resumes. 60 or 70? I'm not going to read 60 or 70 resumes. So I am looking for quick, easy ways to throw away a resume. And one of the quick, easy ways for me to throw away a resume without even looking at it is if it's too long. If it's more than 2 pages, I'm not looking at you. Okay? So keep it to that. Now, this does mean, though, that your real estate on these 2 pages, it's precious, precious real estate. And we're going to talk in depth about what I mean by precious real estate. Okay? Second thing, don't make it, I apologize, I just hit the keyboard. Don't be fancy. Okay? Just use a nice, simple, clean format. Here's the problem is that a lot of people want to, break out from the crowd, right? They want to stand out from the crowd. And for the right reason. If I'm going to look at 60 resumes, well, you want to make sure that your resume really stands out. And so, unfortunately, what this means is a lot of people have gone to fancy formats, different fonts, different colors, all this sort of stuff. It looks like a, newsletter and so forth. Well, you'd think, well, what's wrong with that? Here's what's wrong is the power of format is I can quickly find the information I need without thinking hard. Okay. So, for example, when you go to a restaurant and they hand you a menu, every once in a while you've gone to one where the menu is set up differently than you've ever seen before, and you actually have to spend time and effort to kind of decipher how it is. But most restaurants, they follow the same format because they want you to just be able to look at it and make a decision. Well, when it comes to a resume, I want to be able to quickly and easily find the information that's going to make me say yes. And yes is picking up the phone, right? So if you're going to make me work hard and kind of dig through and rewire my brain to figure out how you formatted this, no, thank you. No, thank you. That's more, style than substance, right? I don't want to hire somebody who's into bling. I want to hire somebody who can solve my problems. And you've already presented a problem to me, how to decipher this resume. So you don't want to make it hard for your managers to say yes. Okay, so format, pretty simple, straightforward. Thing is, there's a lot of things in resumes that I see that I strongly advise you do not include. Remember, real estate is precious on this 1 or 2 page document. So you want to make sure that you put things that tell them that you solve problems, and you don't put things that could prejudice them. You do not want to offer information that could prejudice the hiring manager. So what do I mean by that? Well, one of them is objectives. Every once in a while, you've probably seen, and maybe you have, a resume that includes up at the top, my objective is to break into human resource management and become a general HR specialist so that I can help solve employee problems and grow in my HR career. Okay, something like that. Well, there's a few problems with this. First of all, it told me what you want. I don't care what you want. I'm the hiring manager. I care about my problems. I care about the money I am losing. I care about the things that I cannot solve with my current resources. You've just told me about your goals and ambitions. I don't really care about your goals and ambitions right now. I don't know you well enough to care about your goals and ambitions. So why are you telling me what you want? But now here's the main thing though, and I'm telling you, I see this a lot. Whether you realize it or not, and whether the hiring manager realizes it or not, what you've just done is you've pigeonholed yourself into a very specific career opportunity. You're looking to become an HR generalist, okay? Well, that means that unless the job is for an HR generalist, they're not going to think about this resume. Now, why is this important? Because hiring managers talk, man. Whenever, managers are always talking to managers, and managers are always going to other managers trying to find ways to solve their problems. And managers share resumes. Managers share resumes. And so it is quite often that they'll look at a resume and say, you know what, I don't know if this person's a good fit for me, but finance could really use these skill sets. I'm going to go give this to Margaret because she's been looking for a finance person, right? And if you pigeonhole yourself, then there's this little thing in the back of their mind saying, well, would they be happy in this role? Furthermore, this happens a lot. Every once in a while, a manager will be able to open one rec, right? They'll convince their senior management to open a rec and they can get someone, but they really want two people. Even though they've just put one job out there, they really need two people in slightly different roles. And what they'll do is they'll often take this really awesome resume that, okay, we've already filled this one role, but I have this other person. They'll go to senior leadership and say, hey, we have this opportunity to pick up this person. What do you say? And they'll just kind of slip it in. This happens a lot. And so you want to make yourself available for that slip in. Objectives might prejudice the manager. Okay, next thing you need to think about. Don't put your picture, okay? This is a trend that I'm seeing a lot of right now, is including a picture. This really prejudices the hiring manager on many, many levels. Now, the thing about prejudice is it's in the back of the mind. The manager might look at the picture and say, I'm going to really make sure that I'm impartial and objective, but prejudice is just part of our social filters. And so they'll see, oh, this person's really young. Are they going to have the experience I need? Or, oh, this person's really old. Are they really kind of over the hill, and are they going to have the energy I need to get this work done? And then we've got the whole question of race and ethnicity and background and so forth. So they're going to meet you eventually, hopefully. Don't prejudice them right off. You don't want the picture to be how they see you the first time. You want your skills and experience to be how they see you the first time. Now, you might say, well, Lon, they can just go on LinkedIn and see my picture. True that, they totally can. But here's the thing. If they're taking the time to actually look in LinkedIn at your profile, you've already got the hook in there. All right. They're already interested. So where the picture, if it's there, might put you in the, they look too young to me, I'm going to throw them off, right? If they've looked at your resume, read it, are intrigued and curious, and then search in LinkedIn, well, that's okay because they're already interested in you. Okay. Third thing, along the line of age, don't put the dates of your college degrees and certifications. And that, I mean by that, the year, right? So, for example, I earned my bachelor's degree in 1993. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out 1993. Holy hell, he's old, right? Well, I don't want that to come through when they're looking at my resume. They go, oh my gosh, look, if they got a degree 20 years ago, is that degree even applicable anymore? Did they have computers back then? We kind of did, right? You don't want that. And furthermore, they're going to do math in their head. Well, gosh, that guy's probably in his 50s or 60s. Again, you don't want to give them reasons to prejudice their decisions right off. Okay, so there we go. Things not to include. But then there are things you totally need to do. Totally need to do. You need to mirror the job description and the requirements in your resume. What do I mean by that? I mean, okay, you're looking at this job description, blah, blah, blah. We want this, and it includes requirements. A successful candidate must be able to do the following. You want your resume to look pretty much the same. You want to use the same verbiage. You want to make sure that your skills and experience are expressed in ways that are expressed in that job description. Well, why? Well, first of all, the first person who looks at your resume ain't a person. It's a computer. All right? And all the computer is doing is running an algorithm that says, are they using the right words, the right terms, the right phrases, and so forth? And if your resume is just this generic boilerplate, you know what I mean. You have a resume and you send it to 20 companies in one morning and you haven't changed a thing on it. If your resume is one of those, the computer is going to kick it out. All right, because it's apples and oranges. Whereas if you're using all the right words, all the right phrases, all the right nomenclature and so forth, then the computer says, yes, send it on to the manager. You want that. Okay, then what do you want the hiring manager to do? Well, you want the hiring manager to think this thought. It's like they wrote the job description. Folks, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard this in a hiring committee meeting. Okay. By the way, when they hire for positions, it's not just one person. It's a committee. They put together a hiring team and they meet frequently and they all look at the resumes. And I hear this phrase all the time. It's like they wrote the job description. Now, here's the thing. You know the term willful suspension of disbelief? It's the idea in movies that we know that people can't fly, but when we are in a movie, we willfully suspend that belief and we enjoy the ride. Well, hiring managers, they're not idiots. They know darn well that you probably just mirrored the job description. But they want to believe that you are that good. They want to believe it so bad. Remember, I told you they have a problem and it's costing them money. They're desperate. Trust me. They could be in a lot of pain. To actually get a rec to hire somebody, they need to convince senior management to get the rec. That takes months. They need to actually get the rec through HR. That takes forever. And then they need to get it posted in the right places. By the time they're actually looking at resumes, they're like 3 months of pain into the calendar. And they're not happy. So they really want to say, that's my person, that's my person. You know how whenever you look at a job online and you go, that's my job. It's like it was written for me. They want to see that with candidates. And so you want them to have that feeling. Okay. Now, next thing, let's talk about job descriptions. This is where I'm really going to kind of break the mold of your typical resume. Okay. So what do I mean by your job description? Well, most of you have, when you look at your resume, you have your, the company you worked for and the years that you worked for them, and then your job title. And then you have 5 or 6, 7 bullets saying your roles and responsibilities, right? So my roles and responsibilities when I worked, well, as a professor, is I teach classes, I develop curriculum, I help students along the way, I provide teaching materials, and I sit on the following committees. Okay? Well, this is wrong. And let me show you why it's wrong, and let me show you what we're going to do instead. The first reason that's wrong is that that is a total waste of precious real estate on your resume. Why is it a waste of precious real estate? Well, you didn't tell the employer anything they don't already know. Check it out. I'm going to assume for a moment, I might be wrong, but I'm going to assume for a moment that you are not a college professor. Maybe some of you are. But yet the things I said, I teach classes, I develop curricula, I help students be successful, I develop teaching material, and I sit on some committees. You could have totally guessed that. You're not even a professor, and you know that. So if I'm applying for a job as a professor, they're going to look at that and go, no kidding. Duh. We know you do that. Who do you think we are, right? But here's the real thing. It tells them absolutely nothing about whether I was any good. And remember, that's what they care about. They want to know that you can solve their problems. And so you need to convince them that you're good. And if all I do is list my roles and responsibilities, it tells them nothing. I could be the worst professor on God's green earth. I totally suck at teaching. My curricula is ridiculous. My teaching material is awful. Every time a student comes and visits with me, they leave crying and says, I'm going to, leave the college. I could be awful. And yet my job description doesn't suggest that. So this is what we need to do. We need to show them, we need to take this space and convert it into something that shows them that we can solve problems. So this is what we're going to do. You're going to go ahead and put 1 or 2 lines of a job description. 1 or 2 lines, right? 3 max. You're just enough to show them that, yeah, I do what you think I do, right? College professor, I teach and develop curricula and sit on committees. Yep, we're on the same page. But the majority of your space, you are going to fill with accomplishment statements. Okay? Now, let me first tell you what goes into an accomplishment statement, and then I will give you some examples of accomplishment statements. All right. So what goes into an accomplishment statement are 3 things. You state what you did. What is an action that you took while working for the company? Second, it states the results of your action. So if you did A, B, and C, what was the outcome? What were the results of your doing A, B, and C? And this whole time, you're stating all this in a way that implicitly suggests a business problem. So you're not explicitly stating a business problem, but the reader can kind of figure that, okay, this was in response to a business problem. So I know that may not make a lot of sense, so let me show you some examples. I'm going to show you 3 examples, right? Okay, first one. Developed training programs and workshops resulting in higher employee retention and increased productivity. Okay, so what did I do? Well, I developed training programs and workshops. All right, that was step 1. Step 2, what were the results of what I did? Well, it increased increased productivity, but it also increased employee retention. Our attrition rate dropped, all right? Well, what's the implicit business problem here? Well, the implicit business problem is that we were hiring people on and they weren't really being as productive as we were hoping they would be. And then during the exit interviews, we asked them, hey, why are you leaving? And they said, because you never trained me. I never felt like I was set up for success. And so we were losing a ton of people and having to rehire. That's a pain in the butt and expensive, and they were not productive. So by putting in place training programs, they stopped leaving and they were productive. That was implicitly stated. Let's show another example. Designed and launched promotional campaigns for employee services, thereby reducing call volume and improving the online customer experience. Okay, so step one, what did I do? I launched promotional campaigns. Step two, what were the results? Well, reduced call volume and improved customer experience. The implicit problem? Well, we were having too many people call because they didn't understand the information that was on the web. And every time we told them to go look on the web, they got all miffed because I don't understand. The web is a bad experience. I don't know how to use it, so I'm going to call instead. But by improving this, we were able to reduce call volume and improve the customer experience on the web. Okay, third example, last one. Consigned $2.2 million of previously company-owned material, thereby reducing company investment while ensuring supply availability. Okay, step one, what did I do? I consigned a bunch of material. Now, consigning means instead of buying all the supplies we need, we just borrowed them and we paid for them when we used them. Okay, step two, what was the result? Well, we had lots and lots of supply that we did not have to pay for until we used it. And so that freed up money for other investments. So you see what we're doing here. Now, you might be thinking, well, gee, Lon, I don't know what I would put for an accomplishment statement. I don't know what accomplishments I do. Let me open your mind for a moment. I guarantee you that you provide value to your employer. I guarantee it. How can I guarantee it? Because if you did not provide value to your employer, they would let you go. The very fact that you are still employed means that they are making money off of your work and you are providing value. So it's not a question of do you provide value and do you have accomplishments. It's a question of opening your mind to what they are. So sit down with a friend, sit down with a manager, sit down with a coworker, and talk through this and start writing out accomplishment statements. Think of the things you've done. Find ways that you can measure the results of what you did, because this is what shows an employer that you have what it takes to solve their problems. Okay? So as we wrap up resumes, I want to do this quick quote. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always try just one more time. When it comes to sending out resumes and rewriting them every time to match the job description, it can be really frustrating, especially when you apply to that job that you're like, this is perfect. I'm made for this job. I could do this with my eyes closed, and you don't even get a call back. It's really dispiriting, but don't stop. Keep going. The opportunity is out there. Okay, so what I want to do, we're halfway through. I want to pause here and we can kind of stretch a little bit and so forth and see if you have any questions on the resume front. Remember, we're about to talk about interviews, but I wanted to see if you had any questions on resumes. Looks like we have a good few folks here, so a lot of my students from classes, welcome, welcome. Always great to spend time with you. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm going to type in here, any questions? And any questions for resumes are good. That's what we're here for. I'm here for you right now. Okay, so Kaylee asks, When you mention as if they wrote the job description, what section would that be in? Okay, very good. All right, so most job recs. So when you go to a job posting, you go online and find a job posting. Most of the time, it has a couple of sections. It has job description. This job is, inventory management specialist in our warehouse. Responsible for managing inventory, managing the people, things like that. It'll have that description. And then under the description, it will often put requirements. A successful candidate is required to have these skills. That section is also often referred to as qualifications. So you'll see description, requirement, qualifications. These are the things that you need to kind of reflect in your resume. And when you read the whole thing, you'll see patterns. You'll see the same words used over and over. You'll see the same clauses used over and over and the same terminology. This is a green flag to you that you need to take these words and phrases and put them in your resume, because that is telegraphing to you what they're looking for. Good question. So, Raina, since there are people who have work experience and some people who haven't had work experience, what advice would you give them? So, Raina, please go to the playlist that I have on Nutshell Brainery called Changing Careers. I don't know if so. A video that I recently did, and then one that I have coming up next week and the week after, talks specifically about how to get job experience when you don't have job experience. Now, just as some quick little tidbits, but there's more information in those videos. One is, don't make the mistake of thinking that job experience is only gained in jobs. Let's take the word job and take it out and just say experience. Well, you've probably gained experience in all kinds of venues. Volunteer work with the family, with little projects you've done, things of that nature. School, right? That's all experience. And there's no cosmic law that says you need to have been paid to do something to count it as experience. So if you've done volunteer work for a church, mosque, or synagogue, or some sort of community project, that's experience. If you worked on a major project in school and did something with a team and you have something to show for it, e-portfolio, that's experience. Furthermore, and the video will point you to these things, there's a lot of little things you can do to add more experience. It's that perennial question. How do I get a job that requires experience when I don't have the experience that I would get on the job? We answer that in that series, so be sure to check that out. Okay, you have watched it. And Raina, there's more coming. There's a lot more coming. You've seen the beginning. There's about 3 episodes that talk about how to get this experience. So we'll point you in the right direction. And Raina, you know who I am. You know how to contact me. Of course, you can all contact me through Nutshell. But if you need help one-on-one on your resume, I'm here for you. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Then let us go on and talk interviews. Okay. Here's the thing about interviews, folks. They're actually not that effective. They're not that robust or valid when it comes to finding the right person. There's actually many other methods that are more effective than interviews in finding the right person. And I will talk about those in my video series. But interviews are the way we do it. We've always done it. That's the way I was hired. That's the way my father was hired. That's the way my grandmother was hired. That's the way my wife was hired. That's the way I'm going to hire, right? Well, here's the problem, though. I kind of equate it to reading tea leaves. the company is actually only going to spend like maybe a grand total of 3 hours with you. You know, they're going to do a telephone screening interview, then they're going to bring you in for a one-on-one interview, then they're going to pass you on to the hiring committee, and then you'll meet with senior leadership. In total, they'll spend like 3 or whatever hours with you. And yet they are trying to ascertain and tease out of these 3 hours everything they can possibly imagine, which means there are a ton of gaps in their knowledge and understanding. The problem is we fill these gaps. Our human mind does not like gaps in our knowledge and understanding filled, and so we will fill them, or, missing. We don't like them missing, and so we will fill them. And most of the time, we fill them with BS. We fill them with guesses and speculation and just sort of gut feel. Now, why am I telling you this? Because every single thing you do in the interview will communicate real information, but they will try to ascertain from it all kinds of stuff. And so you need to be very deliberate and meticulous in what you communicate in an interview. Now, if this sounds scary, well, it is. However, here's the beautiful thing. When you know these secrets, I don't like secrets, but when you know these things, you will be empowered, and no, it's no longer scary. It's now you being on equal footing in that interview. So just bear that in mind as we go forward here. All right. The first thing we got to do is we got to prepare for this interview. You don't just show up. You got to prepare. All right. So what are you going to do? You need to research. Research. You got to research. What are you going to research? You got to research the company vision and mission. You really want to sound like in the interview that you are a good cultural fit, that your values align with their values. Now, why? Well, because I got news for you. When it comes to your skills and your experience, a lot of people have those skills. So that's the first thing. You're not going to be differentiated from the crowd because of your skills. A lot of people have them. Second thing is, I can teach you skills. I can totally teach you skills. There's a big movement in hiring right now, and I mean it's a major movement, which is we don't hire for skills, we hire for fit. And I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts, and let me know if anybody of you have. I'm willing to bet you've heard that before. We don't hire for skills, we hire for fit. Meaning, we can teach you the skills. In fact, we're even okay if you don't have the skills because we'd rather teach them to you in our own way so you do them the way we like it. So they're not going to hire for that. What they want to know is that you can fit in with the company. And so by researching and really learning the company vision and mission, you're going to communicate to them that you're a good fit. Okay? Raina says, yes, she's heard that before. So absolutely. Good. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a small adjustment here so that we can see that. Cool. Yeah, she's heard that. We don't hire for skills, we hire for fit. All right, the next thing you need to research is who are the competitors? Trust me, companies are fixated about their competitors. They're always thinking about their competitors. You want to know about their competitors because if you can demonstrate that you have researched the competitors and that you've given some thought about differentiation, then you're all the more on the inside. The whole point of this is to show them that you're on the inside. Okay, core competencies and competitive advantage. So you need to research and understand, what does this company do better than everybody else and gives them a competitive edge against their employers? Okay, so for example, Salt Lake Community College. What do we do better than any other institution? Well, the first one is we're cheap, we're affordable. We are heavily subsidized by the state. And so you can get the very same credit hours at Salt Lake Community College as you can get at a university for a third the cost. A third the cost for the same credit hour. What's another core competency? Small classes. If you want one-on-one interaction with your professor, yeah, this dude right here, you want to go to Salt Lake Community College, because when you go to a university, it's going to be auditorium of 300 people with one teaching assistant down there lecturing, right? So these are things that, differentiate us from the competition. Next thing is you need to really understand what are the key challenges that this company you're interviewing with are facing. What are the key challenges? You want to communicate to them that you know their pain. You understand their problems. And you've even started to maybe think of solutions to their problems. Because when they see that what concerns you is the same thing that concerns them, they're going to be all over it. And then finally, one other thing I like to point out is what disruptive technologies are coming along. What's happening to, maybe 10 or 15 years down the line that could be threatening the company in the future. You'll want to research that as well. Okay. Then you need to prepare questions. Now, I'm going to say this again later on. So if you later on think, didn't he already say this? The answer is yes, but it needs to be said twice. If you don't ask questions in the interview, you will not get the job. Now, later on, I'll explain why. But you need to prepare questions, but not just any question. You want good questions. You want to prepare good questions. All right, what's a good question? What's a bad question? Well, let's do the good one first. A good question demonstrates business acumen and informed insight, one that benefits the company. Okay, what do I mean by that? I mean, a good question is one that you wouldn't know how to ask. You wouldn't know to ask that question unless you understood the company. And furthermore, you wouldn't know to ask that question unless you understood the sort of challenges that we're facing. So, for example, if somebody is interviewing with Salt Lake Community College as, say, a professor, and they were to ask something along the lines of, okay, so I've done a little bit of research, and I have found that when it comes to the OER movement, Salt Lake Community College tends to be a vanguard on the OER movement. How does your particular department approach OER? Now, if you're sitting around kind of going, OER, what's he talking about? That's totally cool, because you're not the target audience. The hiring manager is the target audience. Now, OER, for those of you playing at home, basically means no textbook. You know how if you've been in one of my classes, you know there's no textbook? That's OER. In a nutshell. Teeny tiny nutshell. But the point is, I have said, hey, I've done some research. Salt Lake Community College is on the vanguard of the OER movement, which we are. How does your particular department approach OER? Because each department is allowed to make its own policies around OER. I have shown a ton of acumen in that question. And furthermore, it's a question that really affects the position that I'm interviewing for. That's an example of a good question. On the other hand, yes, open educational resources. Annette knew. Annette knows. It's one of those funky names that are kind of like open educational resources. Couldn't we have added more syllabuses to that? It's ridiculous. Okay. A poor question, though, is selfish and tactical, one that benefits only you. Okay, what do I mean? Selfish and tactical means you're not asking a big strategic question like, where is the college going in terms of this movement that's affecting the industry in general? It's, hey, what's your time off policy? What? Yeah, what's your PTO policy? And how do you get days off? And, it's just like, are you serious? You're sitting in front of me, the hiring manager, and you're going to ask things that are totally in your interest, like what's our time off policy and things of that nature, and do you have bonuses? It's like, not only is that a very tactical question, but it also has nothing to do with the problems that I'm facing as an employer, and it's all about you. So those are not the questions you want to ask in these first interviews. Okay? Yeah, how much is the pay? And that we're totally going to go there. We're totally going to go there. Let's talk about the pay. You want to research the market comp. What's market comp? Asking about the workload. Is the workload really bad? I love it, right? And by the way, Ned, I love your Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy icon there. Yeah, totally. What's the workload like? It's like, it's a hell of a lot of work and it's hard. If you're not interested, move along. Totally. Okay. Market comp, which means market comparison. Here's the secret that I want you all to just let wash over you. Pay and benefits are not a mystery, right? So Annette said one of the things that that is asked is, how much do you pay? This is an open market system. We are a free market. The amount they pay is whatever the market will bear. They will not pay more than the average person wants, and they will not pay less than the average person wants. There are published prices out there for professionals. You know how much a car costs? Go online and figure out how much a car costs. Do you know how much an avocado costs? Go online and figure out how much an avocado costs. Do you know how much an employee costs? Yes, you can go online and find out how much an employee costs. Now, the employer has already done this. They've done what's called a market comp, a market comparison. And the HR department has done this and delivered it to the hiring manager and said the market comparison for this role is between $36,000 and $48,000. So when you negotiate the price with the employee, you need to be somewhere between $36,000 and $48,000. Well, why shouldn't you know that? You can totally run market comps. Now, places to do that, I'm going to write it in the comments here. onetonline.net, I think. It may not be onetonline.net, but it's something like that. Something like that. If you Google that, you'll see it. This is a website that will totally run all kinds of market comps for you. Another place you can go to is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, bureauoflaborstatistics.gov. They will tell you in these charts exactly how much this position makes in this region with this amount of education and experience. These numbers are out there. And then, oh, my friends, go to Glassdoor.com. Go to Glassdoor.com. Glassdoor is really interesting. Employers hate Glassdoor. I think it's incredible. What Glassdoor is that employees of the company, current and past and so forth, go into Glassdoor and write reviews about the company that they worked for. It's a review. Rate My Professor is for professors. Glassdoor.com is for companies. Do you want to take a class from that professor? Well, be sure to know these things first. Do you want to work for that company? Well, be sure to know these things first. It's the exact same thing. But here's the thing. They will also share, if they so choose, and many do, how much the company pays. You can oftentimes pull up the very company and the very position and see how much it pays. So Pay is not a mystery. You want to know what your market comps are. This is going to come in handy in just a moment when we talk about the interview itself. Okay? So when we talk about how to negotiate salary, and we will, you'll want to know this information. Okay. Hey, dress code, guys. Yeah, you'd be surprised how much it matters. First of all, the rule of thumb for how to dress for the interview is a good rule of thumb. And the rule of thumb is one level above the normal dress code. Okay? So however the managers of that place dress, you should dress just one notch above. It's a good, reliable rule of thumb. Well, then the question becomes, well, how do I know how the managers dress, what their dress code is? Well, there's a couple places you can go. One is go to your network. Now, the video series that I'm doing will talk about how to grow your network and how to get information from your network in terms of things like dress code and so on and so forth. But if you know somebody who works for the company, just ask them. The other thing you can do, I know this sounds silly, but I spy. I've driven out there before early in the morning. Why early in the morning? Because the managers tend to show up early in the morning. I show up and see what are they wearing as they walk in, right? And then I'll Google things like, for example, if I'm interviewing for eBay, I'll do eBay employee activities, and I'll look at the pictures to see what the employees are wearing there, right? And well, how do I know which one's the manager? The manager is the one in the middle kneeling down with all the employees behind them. It's the same thing every time, right? Okay. Does it really matter? Oh my holy heck. Let me tell you a story. And this story, it blows my mind every time I think about it. Okay. So I'm working as an HR consultant with the small okay, and that real quick, was hired once because I wore a red jacket skirt set. I didn't know that the red was a no-no, but the manager said she hired me because I showed that I had confidence to wear red. Folks, Annette is right. You see that little comment there. Remember when I said they read tea leaves? Dress is all about reading tea leaves. Red is a no-no, but it's a power color. By the way, red is cool. It's a power color and it communicates confidence and assuredness. And Annette was able to get that job because the manager saw confidence and assuredness just because of the dye color used in a skirt. Okay, so here's the story. I'm working for this as a consultant with the HR consultant with a telecommunications firm, and we're hiring a finance guy, and it's the VP of finance who gets to make the decision who to hire. So the VP of finance places the rec, does the interviews. We all do the interviews. HR does the interviews. Co-workers do the interviews. The CEO does the interviews. It's a small firm. But ultimately, the VP of finance makes the hiring decision. Okay, you with me? Well, one time, there's this guy who he came to interview, and he was dressed sharp. I mean, I don't know if he had his clothes tailored in Italy for him. I don't know a good suit from a bad suit, but he was wearing a sharp suit. His shoes were sharp. His haircut was bang on. The guy looked awesome. Okay, we interviewed him, and he was good. He was in my top 3. All right. Well, then we all come together in the final hiring committee meeting, and the CEO is there, the team is there, the VP is there, HR is there, we're all there. And the CEO walks in, and the first thing he says is, wow, that guy, he's really something. I mean, I saw him downstairs in the lobby, and I thought, that's a sharp-dressed young man. I hope he's interviewing with us. And when I saw him walk into my office, I thought, awesome. Well, we talked about all the candidates and so on and so forth, but he kept going on about how good of an impression this guy made, a good impression. He was talking about dress. Well, it's ultimately the finance guy's decision who to hire. Who do you think was hired? Oh, yeah, he was hired. The CEO influences, trust me, the CEO influences the hiring manager there. So now I want to be clear, he's actually a good employee. He worked out fine. But I want you to really embrace the idea that part of the reason he got the job was because of his dress, just like Annette there. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Location and drive time. So do this. The day before or the week before, some weekday before your interview, drive to where you're going to be having the interview at the time that you think you would be leaving for the interview. So if your interview is at 1 o'clock and you figure it takes half an hour to get there, leave here at noon or a little after noon and see how long it takes to get there. Now, why? Well, first of all, traffic patterns are very specific at certain times of the day, right? So you don't want to drive by at 8 o'clock at night and say, oh man, it took me 20 minutes to get here, not a problem. And then when you leave at lunchtime to go to a 1 o'clock interview and it takes you an hour to get there, you don't want that to happen. You don't want to be late. You just don't want to be late. Not because it just sets a bad impression, which it does, but because then you're hectic, you're harried, you're sweating, you ran up the stairs. Trust me, if I had a nickel for every time that I had somebody come into my office panting because they were running late, yeah, not a good thing. So make sure you do a quick drive-by there. Okay, we have prepared for our interview. We've done our research. We've got our market comp. We know how to dress. We've prepared our questions. Now we're going to show up for the interview. How are we going to do this? All right. First, I want to come back to this mindset for a moment. All right. I think that if you're honest with yourself, you would agree that oftentimes when you go into an interview, you feel like a beggar. You feel like the interloper. The power structure is such that the interview is he or she from on high who doth hand down, job opportunities, while we come in all meekly with our resume and say, please, sir, may I have another? And I really hope I get this job and so forth. And we almost feel like we're out of line for asking the job, and the person there has all the power. Well, I really want you to break that mindset. And I understand that, yeah, like this graphic shows, you're thinking, I need money for my family. I need money for my bills, and I really need this. It is true that your needs may be greater than their needs in terms of immediacy. You have immediate bills to pay. You have immediate family to tend for, whereas they could go another 6 months without somebody and still be in business. So your needs might be more immediate, but your needs are not more dire. And trust me, their needs are keeping them awake at night. Remember when I said they have a problem and it's losing them money, costing them money, and they can't solve it with their current resources, and they've been in this state for 3 months now because it took them this long to get the wreck? These people are almost coming out of their skin looking for the right person. And just as in when you leave an interview thinking, oh, I really hope that went well. I really want that job. I really hope I get that. Trust me, they're going into the hiring committee meeting going, oh, I really want that person. How fast do we need to get that person? Do we have any other, do they have other interviews? Do we need to extend an offer now? How much do we need to pay to get them? Oh my gosh, they are freaking out. So I want you to know that even though you might feel like you're the nervous one, they're nervous too. And when they find the right person, when they find you, they are freaking out just as much. So let go of this whole hat in hand thing. Okay? All right. Next. During the interview, ask questions and take notes. I'm just going to put it simply. If you do not ask questions and if you do not take notes, you will not get the career job. It's really simple. Okay? Now, why? Well, because here's the thing, guys. Let's say for a moment that I'm interviewing you and there's something that tells me I like you. And I know that you're going to be interviewing with HR. I know you're going to go to the other team. I know you're going to go to the hiring manager. Well, I'm the hiring manager, and I know you're going to go to the CEO. Well, and trust me when I say this, I'm going to actually kind of telegraph information to you. I'm going to hide it. I'm not going to overtly say, when the CEO asks you this, say this. I'm going to say, well, cultural fit is really an important part in our company. And our CEO is especially interested in, folks who know how to practice informed risk taking. So, tell me a little bit about your take on informed risk taking, because this is something that is probably going to come up a few times. And so it's important that in other words, I'm telling you, he's going to ask you about informed risk taking. She's totally hip to this. She's going to ask. Well, I'm giving you information. I'm telling you what you need to be successful in the job. I'm telling you about our problems and our needs. And you're not writing any of this down? Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. And then when I say, do you have any questions? And you go, no, you've pretty much covered everything. The fact that you didn't take notes and the fact that you didn't ask questions told me one thing. It told me that you don't care about the job. You don't care about me. You don't care about the problems we're facing. You don't care about what we're looking for. You just want the job because you need the money. That's it. You need the money, so you want the job. But you could take or leave this job in a heartbeat. When you take notes and ask questions and are engaged in the interview process, it's a back and forth. You're telling me you are already an engaged employee. You want to give the impression of being an engaged, problem-solving, root analysis-seeking employee. So ask questions, take notes. All right, next thing. Be prepared for behavioral interview questions. You'll always get these. This has been a trend in HR now for quite some time. These are questions that start with things like, tell me about a time when, or can you describe a situation in which you X? This company, we deal with a lot of customers and our customers are not always pleased with the results. Tell me about a time when you had to resolve a customer issue when the customer was pretty upset. We work on teams a lot, and yet oftentimes our teams don't always come together well. Describe a situation in which you had to work together as a team when there was a lot of team conflict. These are behavioral interview questions. Now, the thing is, if you think about it, it's a pop quiz for an accomplishment statement. Remember the accomplishment statements we did back with the resumes? They're asking you for accomplishment statements. They're saying, what did you do and what was the result? They've already given you the business problem. They want to know what did you do and what was the result. Now, a few things about these. Behavioral interview questions are never phrased in a positive. They are always framed in a problem. They're saying our business is messy and it's wicked, and problem solving is a standard thing in our business. Show me that you have problem solving. And so they're giving you a lot of rope that you can either really, make some cool knots out of or hang yourself with. So you need to really make sure that you understand the information that you're revealing in these behavioral interview questions. So let me explain that a little bit. Oftentimes, they're going to, ask a question that is almost inviting you to tell you about a time that you failed, right? Tell me about a time when you worked on a project and it had a lot of visibility from senior management, but at the end of the day, the project failed or was canceled. Well, if you're not careful and you start playing the blame game, you might say, well, the manager didn't know what they were doing, and the team were a bunch of jerks, and we never had support in the first place, and the objectives set forth were, unclear and totally, impossible to achieve. Well, here's the thing. Remember, they're reading tea leaves. Anything you say about a past employer, in their mind, they are envisioning you saying about them in the future. Let me repeat that. Anything you say about a past employer, past managers, past company, past coworkers, they are envisioning that you will one day say about them in the future. So you want to practice a high level of emotional intelligence. You want to make sure that these answers that you provide show that you are an emotionally intelligent, critically thinking, introspective person. Furthermore, there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying you failed. Absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, some of the questions will even say, tell me about a time that you failed. What's important is that you immediately follow this up with, and this is what I learned, and we actually had a chance to do it again a year later, and it went great. So, for example, I have an experience in my own career where I was asked to manage a team off in Malaysia, but I managed them from here in the U.S. It went horribly. I did a very poor job for a variety of reasons. But I learned from that. I learned you can't manage a team from Malaysia from the U.S. I learned that you can't manage people that you've never met before. I've learned that you cannot manage people unless you understand the business problem that they're trying to solve for. Well, a year later, I was asked to do the same thing again. This time, I moved to Malaysia, stayed there for like 3 months, worked with the people, met the people, learned their problems and so forth, and it went much, much better. So there's nothing wrong with expressing a failure if you follow it up with what did you learn and how did you use it in a future situation. Now, when it comes to behavioral interview questions, I recommend you Google behavioral interview questions and download a sheet. Trust me, they're all more or less the same, and odds are the interviewer got the same information from the same source. They downloaded it from, some site somewhere. So I would take the time to choose, maybe 10, 15 behavioral interview questions and conceptualize answers for them so that when you are asked those or similar questions, you will have responses at the ready. Okay. Now, let's talk about some difficult questions. These are questions that we hate it when the employer asks and we're not quite sure how to respond. I'm going to tell you how to respond. So why are you leaving your current position? What they're really saying is, so are you a good employee? Are you being fired? Are you being let go? Did you feel like your opportunities were limited there? What's going on, right? Now, here's the thing. Let's say that you were fired. Let's go ahead and say you were fired. I got news for you. The majority of us, and I'm in this group, If you've been in the workforce for 20 years, you've been fired at some point or another. It just happens. Now, maybe there's some of you that have never been fired. Great, fantastic, marvelous. But the majority of us have. And we know that it just happens, right? The question is not, were you fired? The question is, why and how did you respond? Okay. So this is where I come back to emotional intelligence, critical thinking, and introspective and taking responsibility. If your answer, if you've been fired, demonstrates these things, then trust me, they're not even going to blink. So, for example, I spent 10 years of my career at a middle manager role at Intel Corporation. Well, for the interview there, I had been fired from my previous position. So when the hiring manager asked, why did you leave your position? I explained, I said, well, I was the marketing director for this company, and they're an engineering company. But we were putting out a product that really focused on environmentalism, on really making sure that we're managing these hazardous materials well and so forth. And so I put together a marketing campaign that really emphasized the environmental aspects. And it was in my job purview to launch that campaign. Well, I launched it and the CEO did not like it at all. We had a row. And at the end of the day, they were engineering focused. I was marketing focused. We weren't coming together. I was invited to leave, and I thought that was probably the best thing. Now, they're doing well. They're a great company. And if you need somebody to manage hazardous materials, I'll give you their name. But it just wasn't a good fit. Well, the hiring manager didn't even blink. She was like, oh, yeah, when you're working with nothing but engineers and trying to talk marketing, there's always a disconnect. And we moved on and I got the job. So just make sure that you're practicing, good responsibility, taking responsibility. Now, what if it's a career path thing? Just say, you know what? I want to grow in my career. I'm young. I've gone to college. I've got these new skills, and there's not a lot of headroom at where I am. When I look at folks who might be retiring or leaving, there's not many people who would be retiring and leaving. And so I just don't see a lot of opportunity. So frankly, actually, I really enjoy working there, but I want to move on, right? Just do it in things that kind of say that you have ambition and vision and growth in mind. All right. What about things like, what was your pay? 1,000. And you're like, holy crap, that's a 25% increase or whatever. That's amazing. I've gone from 20 to a $25,000. This is awesome. I'm going to go home. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to tell my friends and family. It's going to be great. I accept. And they are laughing all the way to the bank because they were prepared to pay 40 and yet they're getting you at 25. All right. You don't want that. You don't want that. And then when they say, well, what are your salary requirements? They're basically saying, okay, are you in our market comp? And so if you give a number that's really low, then that scenario I just told you about will take place. Or if your number is really high, they're going to say, well, you're really kind of out of a range. We're not going to look at you, right? This is what you want to be able to say, is you want to say, well, your HR group has done your market comp on this position, and I've done research as well. I've gone to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and ONET, and for this position in this market, it pays anywhere from $36,000 to $48,000. Now, I'm pretty new in the industry, or I'm highly experienced in the industry, whatever. So I kind of expect something in the low range of 36 to 48 or the high range, whatever. But, when the time comes to negotiate salary, we can get into the specifics. So what you've essentially told them is, don't play that game with me. I know what the price tag is. You know what the price tag is. I know what the price tag is. So when we negotiate, we know what our range is. Don't let them trick you into underpricing or overpricing yourself. Okay? All right. Next one. What about a gap in employment? What if you haven't been in the job market for 7 years? What do you say? Okay. Here's the thing. When they ask about a gap in employment, what they are trying to ascertain is what is your employability? Because the worst case scenario is that you have not been employed because you are not employable. You're impossible to work with. You don't get the job done. You're unreliable. You can't get along with others. All those things. So all they're really trying to make sure is that they're not getting a bad hand. All you need to do is demonstrate that you have used that time productively. That's all you need to show. So I'm just making this step. Well, no, and it's not making this up. My wife is she's working now, but she had a gap in her employment of like 17 years. And, I was working and I was in school and I was working in this medical field, but then I started a family and one of my children is severely handicapped. And so I pretty much had to take myself out of the job market during that time. So I raised my son, took care of that. But during that time, I did a lot of volunteer work that gave me these skills. I stayed connected with the industry by taking these classes and these free webinars. Hey, free webinars, right? So I really made sure that I was still connected with the industry. Well, now today, my son is able to better take care of himself. We have some support and help. So I'm ready to get back in the job market. I went back to school and got these degrees, and I'm all set to go. Well, they're going to look at that and go, great, awesome. Tell me about your son. That's cool. Nothing in there said you're unemployable, right? So all you need to do is show that you spent that time productively. Now, if all you did was sit on the couch and play video games, don't say all I did was sit on the couch and play video games. You want to, even if you're saying, well, I just took classes here and there, I just needed some time to figure out where my passions were, what I was interested in, and now I know what my passions are. That's why I'm in front of you, because I see a good connection. You want to just show productive. Okay, last one, and I always include this. This is not any sort of, assessment of anyone here. I'm looking at you, Annette. Felony convictions. What if you have a felony conviction? I've seen this many times, okay? And the good news is we can still make it work. Honesty, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, introspection, and taking responsibility. These are always the answers when it comes to getting tough questions like this. You want to tell them. You just want to tell them what happened and what happened as a result and where you are now. You don't tell them this in the first interview, okay? You tell them this when they're getting ready to do the background check, okay? Now, let me explain. When they do the background check, they're going to find out. So, what do you do? When they say, well, we'd like to move forward and we'd like to do a background check and so forth, say, absolutely, I'm excited about this. Let me tell you, when you do the background check, you're going to find this situation. I would like to explain it to you here so that when you see it, you'll understand what that is. Okay, now, their face will fall a little bit and they'll start to get a little nervous, but it'll be okay, especially when you practice the emotional intelligence I told you about. But oftentimes, let me explain. When they're ready to do the background check, they've already hired you. In their minds, their decision has already been made. It is only in rare circumstances, I'm not saying never, but in rare circumstances, that they run a background check on a possible candidate. most of the time when they run a check, they've already decided to hire you, and this is just, a perfunctory piece of red tape they need to do. So you've already won them over. You've already shown them you're a good fit. You've already shown them you have the skills and competencies and experience to solve their problem. And so they don't want to be thrown off that rail. So when you explain what happened and so on and so forth, there's a high likelihood that they'll say, that's fine, that makes sense. Sharing a story, I actually coached someone who had 20 years ago a manslaughter charge against him, a vehicular manslaughter. And he was really nervous, and so he asked me, how do I answer this? So I gave him some coaching, and what he essentially said was, it was 20 years ago. I was a teenager, and I wasn't paying attention. I was distracted, and I hit someone. I pulled over right away, and they died, and it was on me. And so I was charged with and convicted with, and I pled guilty. I pled guilty to vehicular manslaughter. I spent, 3 months in jail, or 3 years in jail, and then probation. This was 20 years ago. It's not a problem in my mind. But that said, a day doesn't go by that I don't think about it. And so, this is just a part of my past that I live with, and I hope you can give me a chance. Well, he was hired. Now, I'm not saying he was hired because of my coaching, but I can say he wasn't not hired because of his felony conviction. So just be open and honest with that. All right? So after the interview, that's the interview. There's a few things you need to do afterwards. So don't drop off yet, right? After the interview. First, follow up the next day with an email. And yeah, it matters. Okay, it's a hygiene effect. Okay, and what do I mean by hygiene effect? It doesn't help you get the job if you do send the email, the thank you, but it will help you not get the job if you don't send it. So here's the way it works. We're in the hiring committee, and we're looking at our top 3 candidates, and we're trying to figure out, well, what's the differentiator? Somebody will always ask, well, did she send a thank you email? And the hiring manager, she says, oh yeah, she totally sent a thank you email. It was very nice. And they're like, okay, awesome. They're still on the list. But if they say, hey, did he send a thank you email? The hiring manager says, no, I haven't heard anything from him since the interview. The question will always come up. Are we sure they want the job? Are we sure they want the job? You do not want them to say, are we sure they want the job, when they're making a decision between you and somebody else. So send the email. Keep it simple. Don't volunteer any new information. Now, I'm not saying be secretive or anything like that. I'm just saying you've already given them the information they need to make the positive decision. Don't make them doubt their decision. If you add new information, you think you're adding new information and it might put you over the edge to yes, but quite often new information makes them say, why didn't that come up in the interview? Why didn't you bring that up before? It just raises more questions so just a nice, simple thank you. Don't send a fruit basket. I know you're sitting here thinking, why would I do that? That's over the top and it's like bribery. It happens. It's weird. It happens. I've been on hiring committees where people send cookies and fruit baskets. Cookies are a common one. And it's like, no. It almost just throws you away right off, because now we look like we're open to bribes, and you look like you think bribery can help, even if it's just cookies, right? No, don't do that. Okay, last thing after the interview. What if you don't get the position? Walk away? No, 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 no. Don't walk away. Do this. All right. Contact the hiring manager and ask for 30 minutes of their time to get feedback on where you can improve in preparation for the next opportunity. This is golden. Okay? Let me explain. First of all, nobody does that. And so when somebody does, the hiring manager is like, whoa, this person's serious. I'm impressed. They will almost always say yes to a 30-minute interview. And then when you demonstrate that you're still engaged, that you hold no hard feelings, and you are still developing yourself because this is where you see your career going and where you think you can add value, they're going to do a few things. One is they'll hang on to your resume. Another thing they'll do is they'll agree to link up with you in LinkedIn and be a part of your network. That's a win. Another thing they might do is, remember when I said hiring managers talk to each other and share information and share resumes? They're going to look at your resume again and say, you know what? We didn't hire you, but I bet Vanessa might be interested in talking to you. I'm going to send your resume over to Vanessa. So nothing but wins can come, if you play your cards right, nothing but wins can come from following up and say, can we chat? Okay? I have done this many times, and it has benefited me many times. All right. A quick quote as we wrap this up. To be a great champion, you must believe you are the best. If you are not, pretend you are. Now, I'm not saying be disingenuous, and I'm not going to say practice the hubris of Muhammad Ali, but there is an element of fake it till you make it. Go in with confidence. Know that you are valuable. Know that you have skills and competencies that will add value to the company. Know that if they hire you, you will be a benefit to them and an asset. So don't go in hat in hand. Go in as a professional sitting down with another professional talking about business problems and how they can be solved. And I see here from Raina, this is the first time hearing about that, about Fruit Basket. Are there really people that do that? Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do that. Okay, so everyone, that is it for interviews, and that is it for this this presentation. I want to once again remind you about the Nutshell Brainery series I have on how to change careers, but I want to see if there are any questions out there about interviews, any of the things that we went over. And as I'm waiting for questions, I would like to ask if you have found this valuable. I prepared this material for firms, for people I consult with, for my students at the end of the semester and so forth. But if this sort of career guidance and coaching and counseling is valuable for you, then I will continue to do these live streams. We can talk about how to develop your network, how to get experience when you can't get the job, how to develop your business acumen and so forth. There's a lot of things that we can go over. We can also do really deep dives into preparing a resume. We can actually prepare one online as we're watching. So if this has been valuable to you, let me know, and I'll consider doing some additional ones. Christopher, thanks. You found it to be helpful. Awesome. I'm very glad to hear that. See if there are any questions at all for interviews or any good stories, just like Annette's there. And if you don't have any questions, do me a favor and just say, I'm good, thanks. You can skip the thanks if you think this was a waste of your time. But that way I just know that we're moving forward. Okay, found this valuable. It gave me another options to think about. Yeah, you know what? So Raina makes a really good point. there's 1,000 career counselors out there like me. You're going to get a lot of information from different people. Consider it all. Consider it all. That's why I try to explain the why. You already know everything we talk about. My job is to help you understand the why. I hope that by explaining why we do these things, it makes more sense. Okay, looks like Kylie is looking good. Fantastic, very helpful. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Kylie. Well, then, you know what, folks? We will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you very much for attending. We had some pretty good attendance, had some good input and comments. I really appreciate it. It makes this time worthwhile, and I enjoy doing it. So until we talk again next, have a fantastic weekend and a fantastic day.